On October 8, 2025, gold broke through $4,000 per ounce for the first time in human history. Wall Street called it a milestone. Central banks called it diversification. But history calls it something else entirely: revenge. The revenge of the only money that governments can't print, can't manipulate, and can't destroy. And if you think this rally is about economics, you haven't been paying attention to the last 5,000 years. Because gold doesn't just rise, gold revolts. And right now, it's staging the biggest rebellion against paper money since Nixon broke his promise in 1971. This isn't a bull market, this is a reckoning. And the ancient metal that survived the fall of Rome, the collapse of Weimar Germany, and every currency crisis in between is about to teach the modern world a lesson. It's been trying to forget real money doesn't need permission to be valuable. In ancient Rome, when Emperor Augustus ruled the greatest empire the world had ever seen, the denarius contained 95% pure silver. Citizens trusted it because they could feel the weight of real metal in their hands. That coin financed roads that lasted millennia, armies that conquered continents, and a civilization that defined the West. But by the 3rd century, everything changed. Emperor after emperor faced the same problem: running an empire costs more than taxes can fund. Wars to fight, borders to defend, bread to distribute, to keep the masses quiet. So they turned to history's oldest currency debasement. Instead of raising taxes and risking revolt, they quietly reduced the silver content in each coin from 95% to 50%, from 50% to 20%. By the reign of Emperor Gallienus, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. It was bronze painted to look like wealth, and the people weren't stupid. They could hear the difference when the coins hit the table. They could feel the weight disappearing from their hands. What followed was the first recorded hyperinflation in Western history. Wheat prices exploded. Trade collapsed. The Roman economy imploded so completely that Emperor Diocletian issued the Edict on Maximum Prices in 301 AD, fixing the cost of over 1,000 goods and services. Violators faced death. The edict was a disaster. You can't legislate value into worthless metal any more than you can legislate water to flow uphill. People abandoned the official currency and returned to barter. The Western Roman Empire never recovered. But here's the part they don't teach you in school throughout the collapse. Gold held its value. While bronze coins became trash, gold remained the ultimate store of wealth. Fast forward 1,600 years. Weimar Germany, 1923. The Treaty of Versailles demanded reparations that Germany couldn't afford, so the government fired up the printing presses. The papier mark, once backed by gold, became backed by nothing but promises. Those promises evaporated faster than water in a desert. By November 1923, it took 4.2 trillion marks to buy a single U.S. dollar. Families burned banknotes for heat because coal was more expensive. Children played with stacks of cash like building blocks. A loaf of bread costs more than a house did 5 years earlier. But again, gold told a different story. While the papier mark became wallpaper, gold retained its purchasing power. Those who held gold survived the hyperinflation. Those who trusted paper money watched their life's savings disappear into the smoke of their government's printing presses. The lesson was brutal and clear: when governments destroy their currency, gold doesn't just preserve wealth, it becomes the only real money left standing. Which brings us to August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon sat in the Oval Office facing an impossible choice. Foreign governments were demanding gold in exchange for their dollar holdings at the rate of $1.35 per ounce, the price that had been fixed since 1934. But there wasn't enough gold. France had sent a battleship to New York Harbor to retrieve its gold reserves. Britain was demanding $3 billion worth moved from Fort Knox. If the run continued, America's gold would be gone within weeks. Nixon's solution was elegant and destructive. He ended the dollar's convertibility to gold. The Bretton Woods system, which had governed international finance since World War II, died in a single weekend. The dollar became a pure fiat currency, valuable only because people believed it was valuable. What followed was the greatest gold rally in modern history. From $35 per ounce in 1971, gold exploded to $850 by 1980. That's a 2,429% increase in less than a decade. And now, in October 2025, we're watching history rhyme again. Gold has hit $4,000 per ounce, its 45th record high this year alone. That's a 54% gain, making 2025 the strongest year for gold since 1979. The move from $3,500 to $4,000 took just 36 days. This isn't gradual appreciation. This is acceleration. This is panic buying dressed up as portfolio diversification. But here's what makes 2025 different from every previous gold rally. It's not just individual investors driving the price higher. It's the central banks. The very institutions that abandoned gold in 1971 are now desperately trying to get it back. China's People's Bank has bought gold for 10 consecutive months, pushing its reserves past 2,300 tons. Poland added 67 tons in 2025 alone, targeting 30% of its reserves in gold. Kazakhstan bought 8 tons in August, its 6th consecutive month of purchases. Turkey, the Czech Republic, and Ghana's central banks around the world are trading their U.S. Treasury bonds for the ancient metal they once called a barbarous relic. Why? Because they've learned what Rome learned, what Weimar learned, what every empire in history has learned. When trust in paper money collapses, gold doesn't collapse with it. Gold becomes the refuge. And right now, trust in the dollar is evaporating faster than most people realize. The U.S. national debt just passed $38 trillion. The federal deficit is running at $2 trillion annually. The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates even as inflation remains above 3%, destroying the real return on dollar-denominated assets. Meanwhile, geopolitical tensions are reaching levels not seen since the Cold War. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are actively working to reduce their dependence on the dollar. Russia, cut off from the dollar-based financial system, has been converting its reserves to gold and yuan. China is buying gold while selling U.S. treasuries. Even allies like Germany and France are questioning whether the dollar deserves its privileged position as the world's reserve currency. This is the environment that drives gold to $4,000. Not speculation, but desperation. Not greed, but fear. Central banks aren't buying gold because they think it's undervalued. They're buying gold because they're terrified that everything else is overvalued. When the dollar loses its reserve currency status, and history suggests it will, just as the British pound did before it, gold will be the only money that doesn't belong to any government, doesn't depend on any promise, and can't be printed into worthlessness. The parallels to previous gold rallies are impossible to ignore. In the 1970s, gold surged as the dollar lost its anchor to reality. In the 2000s, gold rallied as housing bubbles inflated around the world. And now, in the 2020s, gold is surging as every asset class becomes disconnected from fundamentals. Stocks trade at valuations that make 1999 look conservative. Real estate prices remain near all-time highs despite mortgage rates at 7%. Government bonds yield less than the rate of inflation. Bitcoin trades at $123,000 with no intrinsic value whatsoever. In this environment, gold isn't expensive at $4,000. Everything else is expensive. Gold is simply repricing itself against a world where money has no meaning, where governments can create trillions with a keystroke, and where the difference between currency and confetti is becoming harder to distinguish. The ancient metal that financed the pharaohs, funded the Roman legions, and survived the collapse of every paper money experiment in history is sending a message in 2025. The age of fiat currency is ending. Not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but the mathematical inevitability is becoming impossible to ignore. When governments owe more than they can ever repay, when central banks print more than economies can absorb, when trust in institutions collapses faster than their ability to restore it, gold doesn't just preserve wealth. Gold becomes wealth. The revenge of the ancient metal isn't about making investors rich. It's about exposing the lie that paper money can substitute for real value indefinitely. Rome learned this lesson when its bronze coins became worthless. Weimar Germany learned it when families burned marks for fuel. And America is about to learn it as the dollar faces the same mathematical gravity that has destroyed every fiat currency in history. At $4,000 per ounce, gold isn't predicting the future. Gold is revealing the present world where governments have lost control of their currencies. Central banks have lost credibility, and the only store of value that has survived 5,000 years of monetary experiments is preparing for the next chapter. The ancient metals revenge isn't complete. It's just getting started. Subscribe to Money's Hidden History. Because when paper money fails and history guarantees it will, you'll want to understand why gold never does.